What are you willing to do to make it? This is a question that hits home with me. This is a story that hits home with me. Now, the story we are talking about is that of Damien Sheehy-Guiseppi, a man who, quite frankly, was a long shot to even be a NFL long shot, a man whose desire to become a professional athlete was so strong that he was willing to spend every last dollar he had and sleep outside of 24-hour gyms in order to just try and get a chance. A man whose story is not even near finished yet, but what has been written so far is just so remarkable. I personally can empathize with Sheehy because I too had that same desperation for a dream. I too have packed my bags and moved across the country in pursuit of a long shot dream. I've lied my way into auditions just to get a chance. I've watched my bank account drain after trying and auditioning and just not having any success. And I've had to pack it all up and admit defeat, not to give up, but simply just to run it back. Now, this isn't going to be another retelling of the incredible story of Damien Sheehy-Guiseppi. Flemro Raps already did that way better than I can ever do. So if you're interested in a more in-depth look at his story, please check out Flemlo Raps' video. I'll make sure I'll link to it in the description down below. I'll even try to put a title card up. This video is going to be about if Damien Sheehy-Guiseppi has a real chance to put this real life version of Rudy together in the NFL. Can he complete the story? Can he do something that's going to inspire so many? Can Damien Sheehy-Guiseppi really make the Browns? Now, let's look at some of the obstacles that stand in Damon Sheehy's way. And there are a lot, admittedly. He is probably playing the worst position in order to make the team as a long shot on this roster because the Browns wide receiver room is absolutely stacked. Now, you have to keep in mind most teams keep 6 wide receivers. The Browns have 2 guys that are definitely not going anywhere in Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham. They also have Rashard Higgins, who is definitely not going anywhere as far as I'm concerned. Then they have Antonio Callaway, who the team seems pretty committed to, even though he just got a 4-game suspension. But that leaves 4 games where there'll be only 3 guaranteed guys. Jalen Strong, the former 3rd-round pick from Arizona State, who was on the Texans, he's probably going to make the team. He's probably a sure fit to make the team. Damian Ratley is also another name that's probably going to make the team. And then you got a litany of other guys who could make a lot of NFL team rosters. Right now, the Browns have Montgomery, Derek Willis, a lot of guys competing for that 6th spot that aren't Damon Sheehy. So this is a very tough room to crack. In order for Sheehy to crack this room, he is going to have to blow minds away on both sides of special teams and be a fire returner for them to justify having an extra wide receiver because they will keep 6 of the guys that I've already mentioned. So unfortunately, this is a major uphill battle for Damien Sheehy-Guiseppi. Now with Sheehy, his best bet to make the team is going to be as a punt returner and kick returner. And he would have to be ferocious in the last 2 games of the preseason in order to make this team. Now, the thing with that is that he is currently probably 3rd or 4th on the depth chart, depending on who you count as a punt returner, that the Browns have liked to go with so far in training camp. Dontrell Hilliard has fielded punts in front of him. D'Ernest Johnson has fielded punts in front of him. Antonio Callaway, Jarvis Landry. There are a bunch of guys that the Browns feel comfortable with fielding punts, and I haven't seen Sheehy on kick returns so far, so I don't know how he does with that. This is going to be one of the harder rosters to make in the NFL for anybody. What Sheehy has to overcome just in this part of his story is immense. But he does have a few things going for him. Hey, look, Antonio Callaway has not helped himself and has helped somebody like Sheehy make this team by not only getting injured, which isn't Callaway's fault, but by getting suspended because he smoked weed, presumably. I don't know. That's not an exact quote, but he did something that got him suspended for 4 games. And now Sheehy's a little bit in a better position because the Browns won't have to worry about his roster spot counting until week 5. And since it's Callaway specifically who got suspended, that does leave a hole in the Browns roster as far as a second burner on this team goes, because we all know Odell Beckham can stretch the field, but Antonio Callaway would be that other guy they could use to stretch the field as well. And right now, since Bashard Perryman left them in free agency, they don't have that second guy without Antonio Callaway. And that's where Damon Sheehy-Guiseppi walks into a good situation. He is probably the 3rd fastest wide receiver outside of Callaway and OBJ on this team. So he has a great opportunity to make it. As right now, in that muck of wide receivers that are trying to make the team, we have taller, bigger guys who can catch the ball really well, but we don't really have a burner. And that's what Damon Sheehy-Guiseppi is, and that's where his hole is in this roster to make at least for the first 4 weeks. And who knows even longer, because Antonio Callaway just doesn't have a very trustworthy track record. The next thing going for Sheehy is that the team and the coaches absolutely love him. Just look at the dog pile they gave this man when he ran back that punt return for a touchdown. Look for the excitement. Look at how Odell has supported this man by giving this man shoes and helping him and mentoring him along the way. This is somebody that really does help a locker room out. You would love to have somebody like Damon Sheehy-Guiseppi around in your building throughout a long season, because his work ethic and his enthusiasm is something that can keep people in check. I would think it's easier to humble yourself as a superstar player if you see a dude who comes in at 3 o'clock in the morning every day just to get some extra workouts in, just to run a few extra routes, and you see that kind of determination every day, it's something that makes you want to pick your game up. And although he might not be able to contribute on the roster as a football player right now, I think that kind of work ethic, that kind of dedication, that kind of determination is something that does make a team better that people don't talk about. So from a cultural standpoint, which a lot of coaches love to mention, the culture in the building, this is a guy that coaches dream of having, right? Coaches love the guy, the early riser, the long night stare, the guy who's football 24/7. And that's Damon Sheehy-Guiseppi. He is definitely dedicated to the grind, and keeping him here would be a great add to the culture. Now, if he can't make the 53-man roster, which is very possible, I think he's an ideal guy to have on the scout team roster, because he's very athletic, he's very quick, he can probably do a lot of things that most other guys can't do. I can just envision him being a great scout team Lamar Jackson or something like that to prepare for him. And he seems like a guy who would be like 1,000% dedicated to performing whatever task he can do to help the team and continue his dream of being a professional athlete. You know, when it comes to practice squad guys, when it comes to guys who are going to mainly do scout team, attitude is a big factor. A lot of guys can fill those roles athletically. You don't need somebody who is super special in that way, but it's more about mentality and attitude on these practice squads. And this is a guy that, if for anything else, you want to keep around for those reasons. So I can really see how he can make the team just by doing that. Practice squad guys have to be guys who are excited to do the very mundane and very tough work that they're going to have to do. And I think Damon Sheehy-Guiseppi is a perfect candidate for that. And now, if he can be a elite special teamer, elite punt returner, and a high-level tackler on the other side of special teams, then I think there's definitely a role for him. There's definitely a role for somebody who can play that Bubba Buntrone role on special teams. The special teams captain, the guy who can get it done on that side of the ball, the guy who's always first man there, the best gunner on the field. That kind of guy has been needed on this team, on this unit. So he would be a nice breath of fresh air in that unit. The other thing I see that can help Damon Sheehy out is that There's not many tight ends worth keeping on this Browns roster. There's Demetrius Harris, there's David Njoku, and there's really a bunch of question marks after that, which means they could keep one less tight end than usual on the roster. And that could probably leave a room for a fullback or a special team specialist to make the roster. And that is something, not fullback, of course, but the special team specialist part of that is something that can definitely keep Damon on this roster. And the same thing kind of goes for offensive line. Since Corbett has experience playing both the tackle positions, both the guard positions, and now center, I can see him being kept as the swing tackle and maybe one other guy, maybe Drew Forbes. And then they could save a roster spot that way, since Corbett does know how to play all those positions and could plug in an emergency at any single one of those. But again, they could use that spot to keep somebody else on the team, maybe an extra wide receiver that's not Sheehy. But again, that's an opportunity for him. There are some opportunities opening up. So what is the verdict? Hey, the reality of Damien Sheehy-Guiseppi making the final roster is one that I root for a lot. It would be a great story. It'd be another fun nugget to add to this already fun team. But when I look at what Sheehy is up against, you start to see how steep that hill is in front of him. And I'm not sure if he can just summit that in just one training camp. I think Sheehy is someone who is competing to make the practice squad. The Browns have too many good wide receivers on this camp roster to make it as a raw prospect. But the practice squad is still an amazing win for Sheehy-Guiseppi. It would give him an extra year to develop as a wide receiver and become a wide receiving threat in the passing game, instead of just a raw prospect who can return punts and contribute on special teams. And honestly, being on the practice squad can be a more stable place, a more stable environment to develop somebody like Sheehy-Guiseppi than being on the bottom of a 53-man roster where there is high overturn and guys are constantly switching teams. Because while the story and the work ethic that Damon Sheehy-Guiseppi has makes the headlines, I think he's also worth a shot because of his raw natural ability as an athlete. He is very fast, he is very quick, and he has not been playing football for very long. So I think there is a great chance that Damon Sheehy-Guiseppi is able to be a productive wide receiver in this league. His only competition he's played so far up until he made the Browns training camp roster was JUCO. He has a lot of growing to do. But if he can grow, if he gets an opportunity like being on the practice squad to grow, then I don't think it would be a surprise to see Damon Sheehy-Guiseppi line up on that 53-man roster on the Cleveland Browns next year. While he may not be ready for a main roster spot right now, I seriously hope he finds a way to stay in the building via being in the practice squad. And I can't wait to see what he has the opportunity to develop into. All right, guys, that is it for this week's video. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload. And if you want to help the show out, you can either buy some merch, which really helps us out, or you can join my Patreon, which helps me out again. So either one of those two things, if you buy some merch, send a picture to me on Twitter with you in the merch, and I'll retweet it and I'll give you a shout out. And if you are a Patreon subscriber, then again, your name will be at the bottom of the bar where you can show off to your friends, and you can be invited to certain exclusive things that are Patreon only. But thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.